Hey, what's up? We are back again for lesson number 2 already. In this lesson, we're going to keep going into learning more open chords. There are really only so many open chords that you can play, so we're going to get to all of them eventually. I'm going to give you 3 more today. I gave you 3 in the last lesson, so by the end of this lesson, you'll have 6 under your belt. And by that point, you're going to be pretty far along. There are only so many to learn after that point. Today, I am also going to show you your first minor chord. I'm going to explain the difference between a major chord and a minor chord. I'm going to give you another one of like the great stock chord progressions in like popular music as we know it. And I am going to explain the power chord to you, which is really one of the main tricks of any rock guitarist. It is it's a good way to fake your way through a lot of things without very much technique involved. So let's recap really quickly. In lesson 1, the first 2 chords that I showed you were the first 2 chords that most guitarists learn, which are A and E. A, E. I also explained how those 2 chords with D fit together into an example of the 1-4-5 chord progression. Those 3 chords, which are based off of the 1st, 4th, and 5th scale steps of any scale, are at the foundation of a huge amount of popular and folk music. And once you have mastered the old 1-4-5, if and when you get to a point where you're able to sort of extrapolate that knowledge and play a 1-4-5 pattern in different keys, then you've learned an awful lot of songs, almost accidentally, right? So today I'm going to give you a 1 minor 6-4-5 pattern, which is the next rational step from 1-4-5, I think. This is another one of the core chord progressions in popular music. But for starters, let us learn some new chords. I'm going to show you a G chord. So let's start. I'll show you how to play it from the low E string up to the high E string. You want to press down on the 3rd fret of the low E string, 2nd fret of the A string, and the 3rd fret of the high E string. The way that I do it, and I think this is fairly common, is to press down on the low E string with my middle finger, the A string with my index finger, and the high E string with my ring finger. So try playing that, see how your hand feels. There is the question of what you do with your thumb, right? Let's talk about that. I had explained earlier that I never had guitar lessons. I initially approached the instrument, I approached the neck of the guitar kind of like a baseball bat, and would just sort of grab it in my fists like this. So I developed this technique where if I'm playing a chord like this, like a G, then my thumb is probably resting like right on top of the neck. It's not really doing much. It's not exerting any pressure. It's just resting there idly. Another thing that you could do with your thumb is to hold it at the back of the neck of the guitar, sort of press toward the front of the neck. Press this way with your thumb, right? And you're also pressing down in the opposite direction with these 3 fingers. So what the effect that has is that your thumb is giving you a little bit of leverage, and it's allowing you to grip the neck of the guitar so you don't have to exert quite so much pressure with your other 3 fingers. You may find that is helpful for playing a chord like this without using up too much energy, without getting your hands sore. But do whatever makes you feel comfortable. I honestly felt probably less sore simply leaving my thumb where I always leave it. It's totally up to you. There's no right or wrong way to deal with where your thumb goes. Practice strumming that G. Get familiar with it. Get familiar with applying pressure with your first 2 fingers and also your ring finger. That part may not be quite so intuitive because your muscles that control your ring finger, for a lot of us, are just not as well developed as the muscles that control these 2 fingers. So it may take a little bit of practice to familiarize yourself with playing that chord so that all of the notes ring out clearly. So do that. Once you do that, I'll show you another chord. This is E minor. This is another open chord, and it sounds like this. The way you fret an E minor chord is 2nd fret of the A string, 2nd fret of the D string, and the other strings just ring out. Leave them open. Every major chord has a corresponding minor chord, and vice versa. So this is the first case that you're seeing of the minor version of a chord that you've already learned. Last time you learned the E chord, E major, right? And this is the E minor. Sort of its cousin, right? Now, the way that I would normally fret this, fret an E minor, is with my index finger on the A and middle finger on the D. But as you become more familiar and more comfortable playing, you may find that there's some other form of fingering that works better for you. A lot of times, honestly, I just use my middle finger and hold down both of those strings with one finger. Depending on what I'm doing with my hands, what chords I'm transitioning from, I might use my middle and ring fingers. I don't want to confuse you too much, but I just want to say that, like, there are multiple ways of just getting to that particular voicing, and whatever feels comfortable to you at the moment, just run with it. For now, perhaps stick with index finger on the A and middle finger on the D string, and just let that ring out. Now, you should also, at this point, try strumming the G and the E minor in succession of each other. You'll find as you start learning songs that those two chords go together a lot, and as such, learning how to transition between the two of them is a really helpful thing. It will probably require some degree of intention and concentration on your part at the very beginning, but over time, it will probably get a lot easier to transition between those two chords without even moving your wrist at all. You're really just moving your fingers and barely your hand itself. So try strumming those two chords together. Try switching back and forth between G and E minor. And yeah, once that starts to feel good, then we'll get into the next open chord. And this one is going to be C major. Now, here is how you fret that chord, right? So, on the A string, hold down the 3rd fret. On the D string, hold down the 2nd fret. On the B string, hold down the 1st fret. And let the other strings ring out. The way that I do it, and I think this is also pretty common, is to hold down the A string with my ring finger, D string with my middle finger, and B string with my index finger. I feel like this just kind of naturally falls into place. That's how it is I think that's common enough. And there's a question of what you do with your thumb. It's very similar to the G, right? You can either grip the neck like this, which might help you apply even pressure with these 3 fingers. Or do what I do, just leave your thumb kind of lazily hanging out somewhere on the neck. So try playing this. Just hang out with the C chord for a little while. Make your hands make your hands comfortable. Make your hand feel comfortable. And when you familiarize yourself with that, I am going to, I'll tell you where I'm going with this. So these 3 chords that I just showed you, they are the beginning of a 1 minor 6 4 5 progression. I will play a little bit of a 1 minor 6 4 5 in the key of G. Now, I don't even really know what that was specifically. I wasn't trying to play any particular song, but if it sounded vaguely familiar to you, that's because this is one of the major stock chord progressions in all of popular music. Like, you'll find that a lot of popular music uses there's like a set of chord patterns that just keep popping up over and over and over again. And 1 minor 6 4 5 is one of those. It might sound familiar from 60s pop. You know, there's a lot of that stuff that uses that progression, but it's really all over the place. Like, you can see, you know, it goes back to even Great American Songbook type stuff, and even farther back than that. You know, it's in folk music, it's in country music. So, to explain, sort of contextualize this a little bit, that when I say 1 minor 6 4 5, what we are referring to is the chords that are based around the first, 6th, 4th, and 5th steps of any scale. The 1, the 4, and the 5 are going to be major, and then the 6 is minor. So we are in the key of G right now, and a G scale goes like All right, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 octave. So in that case, the first step of the G scale is G. There's your 1. The 6th step of the G scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's E. So minor 6 is E minor. 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the C. 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's the D. There you go. 1, minor 6, 4, 5. We could put that into different keys, you know. Say we do it in the don't worry about learning this right now. I'm just giving you another example. Say you're in the key of C. 1 minor 6 4 5 in that case would be like this. So yeah, let us revisit the D chord. I might be jumping around a little bit, but we're talking about G, about this chord pattern in the key of G. We've got the G, we've got the E minor, we've got the C, and then we've got that D, which we had talked about last time. And just to recap, let's work from the high E string down to the low E string. So you want to fret the 2nd fret of the high E, 3rd fret of the B, 2nd fret of the G string. Then there's the question of what you do with the low E, right? What I just did was I wrapped my thumb around and I fretted the 2nd fret of the low E string with my thumb. That's a fairly unconventional move. It is more conventional to either rest your thumb on top of the neck, just barely touching the low E string, so you deaden it. So you can play all 6 of those strings without accidentally hitting that cursed low open E. You know, that one note that doesn't belong in the D chord and will make you sound bad. So, to sound not bad, you want to deaden that string. Somehow wrap your thumb around and fret the 2nd fret of the low E to sort of complete the chord, or just don't strum it at all. So yeah, once again, there's your D, and now you can start stitching together this whole chord progression: G, E minor, C, D. All right. Now, here's another thing that I had promised to tell you about. Right, the difference between a minor chord and a major chord. So since I've already shown you E major and also E minor, let us use those two chords as an example. Now, I'm going to break for just a second and turn some lamps on because it's starting to get dark. Okay. Okay, we're back just in time to get geeky. Here's a little bit of music theory that, you know, retain this or just leave it out of your, or reject it from your brain to whatever degree you want. But one of the goals is to make all of this guitar stuff and music stuff in general less mysterious. So let's break down the mystery, the difference between your major and minor. The more facile explanation that you might hear is that a major is a happy chord and a minor is a sad chord. And I personally don't think that is fully accurate, but it works for like a little bit of shorthand. Major is associated with just more upbeat music. Minor is associated with like more tense or downbeat or melancholy music. Because we've been hearing relatively formulaic music for our entire lives, we're super acclimated to associating moods with certain sounds. And so yeah, it can be your choice when writing a song. Choosing a major chord, a major key versus a minor key is, it matters. It communicates something. So why do those two chords sound so similar, but also so different? Well, to explain that, we want to get into the triad. So every major or minor chord has at its root, basically at its core, a triad, which is 3 notes that harmonize with each other. So that's always going to be the 1, the first step of the scale, the 3, and the 5. There's your major triad. Now, your minor triad is going to sound like this. The third step of the minor scale is like just flatted half a step from the third step of the major scale. Because an E major scale, I'll give you this example since we're playing in the key of E already. An E major scale is like, so you hear that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now, E minor, let's get very sad here, very, very serious. You hear that? The differences between major scale and minor scale are small, but carry a significant amount of weight. So that E minor is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, an octave, right? So what you'll see there when you sort of match up the major scale and a minor scale, the third is your differentiator. The fifth is the same note in either scale. So take any major scale, any minor scale. If you take A major and A minor, you'll find that the fifth is the same in each of those scales. And that's true for every single key. And the third is the one that changes when you switch from major to minor. Now, in the key, now we'll see with our open chords, all these open chords that we've been talking about, every note that you're playing, every note that you're strumming is one of these three notes of the triad. So when we play an open E chord, the low E string is the one, the root note. The second fret, when you play the second fret of the A string, that's your 5, right? That's the 5th. Second fret of the D string, that's another, the note is E. Same note as your root. It's the same thing, it's just a different octave. First fret of the G string, that's your 3rd. The B, open B, that's another 5th. So we had another 5th lower down. On the A string, second fret of the A string, and the B string up here. Those are both, the note is B in either of those cases. They're just in different octaves. And then the high E string, I mean, that's another E, so it's another, it's another 1. You're back to the first step of your scale. So each of those notes is either the 1, the 4, I'm sorry, each of those notes is either the 1, the 3, or the 5. And it's like that with any of these open chords that I had shown you. Like with G, that low note, lowest note is the 1, second lowest is the 3, and then the third one is the 5. There's your triad. The next note, that's another G, so you're back to the 1. The next string, that's going to be another 3. Next one, nope, actually next one, the highest string, high E string, 3rd fret, that's just another G, so you're back to the 1 again. So you feel me on this? Like any of these open chords, each one is really just made up of 3 different notes, but depending on how you're fingering those chords, they just come in at different octaves, right? So there you have it, the major and minor triads unlocked. And now we're gonna just blow that out of the water. We're gonna talk about power chords. this is what a power chord sounds like. Right? This is what several power chords together sound like. What is that crazy, crazy sound? So a power chord is, it's a 3-note chord. And those 3 notes are the root note, the 1, the 5th, and the octave. So, you know how with a triad, it's always 3 notes in harmony with each other? With a power chord, it's just the 2. Hear that? The higher and the low, the high and the low notes of those are the same note, different octaves, and then the other one is just it's just the 5. So I'll show you how to finger that, and it's the same position. Your hand goes in the same. You hold your hand in the same position, no matter what. No matter what actual like note chord you're playing. So I'll show you one in A. So an A power chord, press down on the low E string on the 5th fret. Then use your index finger, your ring finger to press down on the 7th fret of the A string and the 7th fret of the D string. So you have your index finger on the low note, and you have your ring finger on the higher 2, and your middle finger is just kind of in the middle, giving you a little bit of space, leverage. You'll find, like, with the whole muscle memory thing, your middle finger will help you from accidentally getting your fingers too close together and screwing up the chord. And the way that power chords work, you play them on your lower strings, right? So you can either play you can play a power chord with the root note on your low E string, or you can play a power chord with the root note on the A string. So if we are playing, here's an A power chord, right? I'm playing the low E string, the A string, and the D string. Now if I were to shift up to do the same, basically the same formation, same chord formation, holding your hand the same way, but to do that with the root note on the A string, so that means index finger 5th fret, ring finger 7th fret, ring finger 7th fret of the G, right? A, D, G strings, 5th and 7th frets. That's a D power chord. So you can go from A to D, you know. Make sure you're playing only 3 strings. With each power chord, because that's all a power chord is. It's 3 strings, and it's just the root, the 5th, and your octave note. So what that means is a power chord is neither major nor minor. Oftentimes it's used in rock music for emphasis, you know, like something like that. But it's also like super common in a lot of punk stuff. Famously, Johnny Ramone never learned how to play anything but but power chords. And like later, at some point in the 80s, when the Ramones had already been a band for like 10 years, somebody else in the band came to him with an original song that used a minor chord, and Johnny was like, he thought that someone was screwing with him. He did not know what a minor chord was. All that he had ever known were power chords, and that's what he is able to use for like 20 years with that band. So power chords are are a great lazy trick for any rock guitarist, and you can kind of fake your way through a lot of songs if you are having a hard time figuring out, oh my god, is this major or minor? Well, rather than screw it up and play the third the wrong way, just cut out the third entirely. Right? So yeah, that's about it. I had said the way that you fret a power chord is to use your index finger and your ring finger. They're always going to be like a full step apart, 2 frets, right? You have 1 fret in the middle. Wherever you go, there's going to be the 1 fret in the middle. Right? I don't know if you can see that. But there's always going to be that 1 fret in the middle. One thing that you can do if you're having a hard time holding down 2 of those strings with 1 finger is you can use the same formation, same chord formation, with index finger on the low string, ring finger on the second lowest string, and pinky on the remaining string. That's one way you can do it. And you can do whatever you want with your thumb. If your thumb can just kind of, if you feel comfortable with your thumb floating behind the neck, then do that, or resting gently. Or again, if it helps to have that pinch maneuver, so to give you more leverage, then cool. So now you know how to do some power chords. You can fake your way through a lot of rock music, especially if you have an electric guitar. So yeah, that's today's lesson. So to recap, what we have done today is we've gone through we've learned 3 new chords: G, E minor, C. We've touched up on the D again, and we've learned how those chords fit together into a 1 minor 6/4 pattern. A 1 minor 6/4/5 pattern, sorry. And we've explained the difference between a major chord and a minor chord by breaking down a major and a minor chord into a 3-note triad, which is at the center of every basic major chord or minor chord. And we have also gotten into power chords, which you can use to fake your way through a lot of stuff. That is today's lesson, and get to practicing at whatever pace you are comfortable with. All right, cool.